This is Faith Encouraged with Father Barnabas Powell. Homilies designed to help you live a purposeful and faith-filled life in Jesus Christ. Here's Father Barnabas.
I'm glad you're here. Especially on this very special day. This is Father's Day, and it's a day that I take very seriously. I think there's a lot of reasons for that. Some of you know my story, and you know that I have a complicated relationship with my dad. And my dad last year reposed. He died last year. And I have been fascinated just from a psychological and, you got to forgive me, gang, I took psychology in undergraduate work, and then I took a lot of counseling classes in graduate work too, and I just think that way. It's horrible. But I do. I think that way. But I've been kind of fascinated. I've been able to kind of step back and look at my own grief process about my dad. Dad was pretty much out of my life when I was 9 years old. Dad had his own particular struggles with his life, but he really tried to mend his life there towards the end. And to the point where when I was 14 years old, I came to live with my dad, with my mom and my stepmother and my stepbrother and my younger brother Greg. We were all living in Orlando, Florida. And so when I turned 14, I left that place and came to live with my dad. And he was living in an apartment underneath the church where I grew up. He was living in the church apartment. And so I moved in with him with a church apartment. We had one little bedroom that he slept in, and I slept on a cot out in the kitchen. And I remember, the one thing I remember about that little apartment was, man, there wasn't no water pressure at all in the shower. I mean, there just wasn't none. It's frustrating. You had to work to get wet in there. It was just stand up there. This little misty thing that came out. It was almost like it was insulting me. Felt like I was sweating rather than taking a shower. It was horrible. But anyway, I grew up in that way. When I was 14 years old, and went to a private Christian school right there on the church grounds, and it was an amazing time in my life. And yet, even with that, the complicated relationship that I had with my father continued, off and on. There are things that I have always admired and loved about my dad, and then there are a lot of things that I just frankly don't know about him, because he was never really that much involved in my life for a long period of time, just now and again. To the point that it has been, I feel like I'm on Oprah today. It has been a challenge for me to be able to gauge clearly if I'm being a good father to my own children. One of the things that I really committed to do is, by heavens, I'm going to stick around. That's just all there is to it. I'm going to be involved in my kids' life. They're going to know who their daddy is. And I think I've done that. I've got, yes? Amen? Oh, yay, plus. Good. So, I think I've really worked hard on that. But then I began to think of something else that's very complicated. You see, dear ones, we call God Father in the Orthodox Church. And if my only view of fatherhood was from my physical paternal father, I may have had a really tough time understanding or even appreciating God being called Father. In fact, I've known some people and talked to some people that when you call God Father, they think that's not a good thing at all. That's a bad thing. They don't have any respect for fatherhood because of their own father, and they didn't have a lot of male role models in their life. Now, I was very blessed to have lots of male role models in my life. My pastor of the church that I grew up in, Brother Holder, when my mom and dad divorced, Brother Holder was in the driveway of my house on every Sunday morning to pick me up to bring me to church. When Mom and Dad had quit going to church, Brother Holder was there to take me to church, and I was there early on. So there was a stick-to-it, a role model of faithfulness in front of me. And men throughout my life have provided that over and over again. But I don't believe it's a mistake, brothers and sisters, that I ended up in a church where the priest is called Father. I think that makes perfect sense. In fact, I saw a great diagram this week about fatherhood, and it contrasted. You ever seen the Venn? I hope I'm saying this right. Venn diagrams, the circles, and wherever all the circles intersect, that's what you should really look at. Is that right? A Venn diagram? Is that right? Okay. So in one circle was a young man's dreams. In another circle was a child's forgiveness, and in the last circle was an old man's regrets. And so every place where those intersected, that's father. Because the older I get, the more I figure out, you know what? I got more time behind me than I do in front of me. I just do. And if I'm going to be a good father, if I'm going to be a good anything, I better get to it. Because no matter how much I live or how long I live, I guarantee you there are going to be times I'm going to look back in my life and I'm going to see regrets. So the question that I have to ask you this morning is this, on this Father's Day. Has your own imperfect father, and all fathers are imperfect, guys. I know that's going to come as a shock to some of the younger kids. Because my daughters, my youngest ones, look at me now and they just think that, my littlest one especially, is that okay if I say something? Is it all right? I want to do it anyway. She just says all the time, Daddy, I love you. Daddy, I love you. I mean, just out of the blue. She says, Daddy, can I tell you something? Yes, I love you. I love you, Daddy. I love you. And I tell you what, I love that kind of stuff. But all dads are imperfect. And even with that being the case, what have you done in your life to overcome the weaknesses of the men in your life, whether you're a man or a woman? What have you done in your life to overcome the weaknesses in the men in your life from infecting your view of God? What have you done? How have you purposely worked to understand who God the Father is so that you don't pull poison into what is arguably the most important relationship you're ever going to have in your life, folks. No matter what kind of relationship you had with your earthly father or your earthly mother or your children or your siblings or your friends or your relatives or your husband or your wife, arguably, I would argue that your relationship with God is more important by 1,000,000,000% than all of those other relationships put together. And that if you allow the broken relationships in your life to poison how you look at God, you're going to poison the one relationship, if you get it right, will give you the grace and strength to give forgiveness to all the other ones. And the freedom and the power that will grant you in your adult life to let go of anger and bitterness and fear and allow you to live free. Because, gang, here's a newsflash. You can be angry at somebody and furious at somebody or hurt at somebody till forever. And guess what? It ain't never going to hurt them. It's only going to hurt you. It's only going to poison your own life. And you were not made to have a poisoned life, my angels. You were made to be free. You were made to have a relationship with a God who loves you more than you yourself know how to love. You are made to experience the true life that Jesus Christ offers each of us, free from the shackles of the mistakes of those around you and your own mistakes. You are made to be liberated from that. You were made to experience the orthodox good news of resurrection life in Jesus Christ. That's what you were made for. You weren't made to be a prisoner to your past. You weren't made to be a prisoner to your family mistakes. You weren't made to be a prisoner of your own mistakes. You were made to be free. That's why you were made. And you're never going to be free if you allow that poison from your past to pollute your present and your future. No wonder in our gospel lesson today, Jesus Christ comes up to some men and he says to them, "Follow me." I love this word in the original language. I love the word in the original language that is translated immediately. It means exactly that. The second the words fell out of his mouth, they popped up and they started following him. What was it about Christ that it caused that kind of reaction from men who didn't know him? Brothers and sisters, I'm convinced it's the very thing that God the Father is offering you today, if you'll just only hear it. What's keeping you from popping up and following Jesus Christ? What's stopping you from actually practicing the Orthodox faith, not as a spectator, not as a now and again visitor, not as someone who has orthodoxy as nothing much more than a decoration to your life, but an actual lifestyle that shapes how you live? A friend of mine was sharing with me a statistic that frankly bothered me a great deal. It still bothers me. The Pew Research just came out with a statistic that said that only 64% of evangelical Protestants allow their faith to determine how they live their lives, how they make their choices in life. They had a statistic for the Orthodox too. Of those identifying as Orthodox Christians, only 24% said that their faith determined how they lived their lives. Only 24%. Brothers and sisters, if we're going to leave healthy children in our wake, if we're going to leave healthy daughters and sons, we're going to have to do something about that statistic. We're going to have to leave, especially we men. We men are going to have to leave a better legacy for our children to follow, to take away as many obstacles as we possibly can from them seeing God the Father in a poor light. Because most of us, brothers and sisters, are going to incarnate and shape our children's view of who God is, not by our words so much as our actions. This morning, on this Father's Day, are you a man or a woman with courage that can hear the call of Jesus Christ on your life this morning in this place, and then have the courage to respond immediately so that your children will not have the obstacles of following Christ that you may have had in your own life? On this Father's Day, my precious friends, especially you men, we need you. And we need you as more than spectators. We need you as more than happenstance in this practicing of the Orthodox faith. Can I tell you one quick story? Broke my heart. A lady came to me and told me, she said, "Father, it'll just be me and the kids coming to church." My husband said, "As long as the wife goes to church, that's enough." The boy's glad I wasn't standing there when she told me that. I may have had to grab him by the lapel and, in love, of course, it would be all in love, kind of rattle his cage a little bit. Fathers, live your life in such a way that you don't put a barrier between you and your children from being able to call God Father and love that. That's your calling. And the only way that's going to happen is if you're Orthodox on purpose.
Father Barnabas is the priest at the Saints Raphael, Nicholas, and Irene Greek Orthodox Church in Cumming, Georgia. Find out more at faithencouraged.org. That's faithencouraged.org.